All right, guys, what's good? This is Sonic Soul here with another video. This time I wanted to talk about something that's happened within the past couple of days. I've been playing a lot of Zenless Zero. I've been playing a lot of it and I've been having a good time, but I've noticed that there's like some drama going on with like this guy called Iyokuu, and within the Zenless and gacha community, you know, there's been like some warring or whatever because of the way he's playing the game versus the way that the gacha frogs are playing the game. You know, to be honest, I'm a fighting game player. That's what I primarily do on my channel. I don't really get a lot of viewers doing a lot of the gacha game stuff or variety stuff. Usually when I play those games, I just play, you know, just because I want to. I just play for fun. But when I play seriously and I want to sweat my balls off, I play fighting games, and that's really what I'm good at. That's why a lot of people know me. Being that that's what I am interested in this type of discussion only because it's like, well, it's a lot of people that just don't know the terminology on these things. And now it's getting to a point where people are like making fun of it and they're like, yo, I've negative edged all over myself. And for me, it's like, as a fighting game player, when I see gacha players make fun of all of these terms that like defined very complex things that we had to do in fighting games that like made or break like certain inputs or certain tactics, it sucks because it's like, I'm a fighting game player. People just make fun of it. You know, it's that one meme where you're like the wallflower in the party. Like, damn, these guys don't know that I play fighting games. You know, like that shit makes me feel bad. I wanted to more or less define what the heck Iyokuu is even talking about. Why I don't think it's really good to really like splice these type of terms into gacha games. It's a gacha game, man. You just gotta play, not make it super complicated. I'm gonna just get started with what you see on the screen right now. This is Iyokuu. And mrpokke or whatever, this guy is one of the gacha people that play Wuthering, Genshin, etc., right? And there's this like war or whatever with Iyokuu because he was finding all this tech in Wuthering Waves and in Genshin Impact and now Zenless Zero, right? You would think it's from a fighting game, right? The way he's phrasing it is like he's trying to use fighting game terminology to describe what he's doing. This video, I'm not going to play the whole 1 hour, etc. of it because this is a long reaction video to a video that's now privated. And personally, I don't think Iyokuu should have privated this video. He should have just left it the way it was. Because right now, like, there's a lot of people that are still, like, talking about this video, myself included. There's other videos that I want to go over, mainly the Gacha Cast Unedited and the Unlock New Combos, Wuthering Waves, Combat Changes Everything. These two videos are going to kind of go over like what I think and my impressions of Iyokuu's responses here. Iyokuu is on this like podcast. He's like the fighting game representative of the gacha community from what they have. I'm surprised Lakari is not that. Shout out to Lakari. But regardless, he gets dragged onto the show and one person mentions the idea of a fighting game versus a gacha game. I don't know who this guy is on the left, but he makes a decent point, right?
So me myself, I am also a fighting game player. I know.
Let's go.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. Huh? Yeah, just started yesterday. I know, man. Because I did read your tweets a little bit, and it just seemed like you're like comparing Zenless Zone Zero and fighting games pretty closely, and I can't really find too much of a comparison, like, because even though they do have, I guess, like combos and you can like juggle and stuff like that, the difference is very big because on Zenless, it's a single-player game. You're just like juggling an NPC, whereas in fighting games, you get to like land them against actual players, and that feels 10 times more rewarding. Whereas in Zenless Zone Zero, when you land it on like I guess like an NPC, it's like the same level as like landing on like a training NPC or like a training dummy in the range or something.
It's like juggling a soccer ball.
Yeah, I see. In a fighting game, when you fight against another person, in anything competitive, landing that hit on somebody, you earn that hit because you had to outplay your opponent and your opponent needed to make a mistake for you to get that hit in the first place. Prime example, when it comes to fighting games, when the game says round 1, fight, both players do not have the initial advantage on hit, on block, etc. Both players are further away and they have to figure out how to hit the other person. The fighting game glossary by Infilament goes through this concept, and they even go over like footsies, which is the important aspect of playing neutral game and how people vie for space. They fight for space. So they have an example here that you can scroll down and you can see what neutral looks like, right? It's two players kind of like whiffing buttons in and out of ranges, and somebody whiffs a button that they shouldn't and they get whiff punished. So in this case, she did forward heavy kick, right? She did forward heavy kick. This is a completely different button, but it's covering the same range, right? On later frames, you can punish this, right? So the Chun-Li player made the mistake of doing that long button and got hit by Ken's low button. This is Daigo and Alex Valle, right? They're both playing. He gets whiff punished by Daigo. He does low forward, crouching medium kick, and Daigo does sweep. Punk versus Tokido, right? Counter poke with standing heavy punch. You see he whiffs that big heavy kick, and then Tokido does the dash up and the jab, right? And now that was a whiff punish. Even in other games, you see how like there's a lot of mobility in the air, or even in grounded games. You know, it's all based on you playing versus the opponent. That's what the neutral game is. There is no like neutral game in a gacha game in like Wuwa or Zenless, or there is no neutral game. What are you gonna play neutral with a fucking robot? Like, you're not doing that. Instead, you just attack. Like, you know that the CPU is just gonna stand there. 9 times out of 10, you are just gonna attack. So sure, there may be some pattern recognitions you could look at with a computer that's programmed, but it's not the same as like a human who is going to adapt in real time. And 9 times out of 10, you're just gonna hit your buttons and attack. The more your stats are built up in a gacha game, the more incentive it is for you to just wail on whatever it is that's in front of you, because you're gonna deal enough damage to just plow through them. Some bosses and some enemies are just straight damage checks. So that's like the neutral, right? And that's kind of what this guy is saying, is that like, you know, the reward is that you hit an opponent, whereas in a gacha game, you're not really doing that.
Yeah.
So let me add into that real quick with the juggling part, right? Are we all familiar with Tekken?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No? All right. So Tekken is the game where I don't want my opponent to play the game. It's literally don't let your opponent play the game. That's really what it is.
Iyokuu responds with the whole Tekken is a game where you don't want the other person to play. Tekken is a fighting game where you don't want the other person to play. Knowing what fighting games are and what I just explained to you and what the other guy explained to you, that is inherently false, because you have to work to get that hit in the first place.
So in Tekken, my goal as a player is to punish you for your mistakes while also not allowing you to play the game.
But that in and of itself is a contradiction, because you punishing their mistake means that they made a decision. They had an interaction with you and they were wrong. In a way, they did play the game, but they made the wrong decision when they played, and thus they lost. The fact that they have the ability to make that decision, what if they made the right decision? Then they would have been alive and they would have been able to play the game much longer than you, right? It's not necessarily just because you hit them that the initial, like, you not letting them play the game happens. It's more that you hit them because they made a mistake, because they put themselves in a bad situation. In gacha games, you literally just hit the CPU. Even at the higher level play, this first play that happens here is all nothing but neutral and pokes. Just kind of like the example I showed before. You see, like, it's these two guys like vying for space, ducking under normals, poking each other. You know, sometimes tagging for lows to force them to kind of block low so they get hit by a mid. You see, that's what Arslan Ash is kind of doing to just check damage. Atif's doing the same thing, maybe hitting with a plus on block normal. I'm keeping my example and my explanations very small because I want you to just look at how it's being played. You know, to the untrained eye, you might just think it's just two people swinging at each other. But it's actually both of these guys trying to fight for a particular range, and also not trying to get hit by lows because they're very unreactable, and also trying to get the other person to get hit by mids. There were no combos that happened, right? No combos. This is the first combo, right? He got launched. He got counter poked by a down forward 2. He dropped the combo near the end. You see, like, then he gets thrown here. Side switch. But as you can see, it's both of these guys just fighting. He gets hit by a snake edge, a sweeping low. He gets a combo for it, or Arslan Ash, right? Now he pushes him further and further. There's a juggle. Now he has to guess. That's a low. That's a mid. He got hit and he lost, right? The reason why that happened is because he got hit by the low and it forced him to make a decision, right? After he got hit by this low, Atif had to now think, okay, do I want to block low or do I want to stay blocking high? I don't want to get tagged again. In this case, he tried to throw because he knew one of the options that Arslan Ash would do would be to power crush, which is an armor move. However, he sidestepped before doing this and he avoided the grab, right? And that actually punished him. So my point is there was interaction. What Iyokuu is saying here in this example is wrong.
Tekken is known for juggling. If you ever see anybody playing in a tournament or like a moderate player versus a casual, the casual will never touch the ground. The time they touch the ground, they get picked right back up into the air, and then you'll see like the big old KO screen or whatever, and you're done.
So a casual will get juggled over and over and lose versus a moderate level player, right? But the difference is that it's still a human being on the other end as opposed to a CPU, right? A human being on the other end is just lacking the knowledge to be able to handle those things. Whereas a CPU will never be able to gain that knowledge. It's either it's going to try to read your inputs or it's just going to die, which is a very different, it's a very different environment. The point is getting the hit, right? He's trying to explain how the hit occurs to make the other person not play. The CPU is already it's not a thing. It's not a human. So
fighting games have predominantly had ways to dominate your opponent so that they can't play the game. Now, using this in Zenless, because it is a PvE, it's not a PvP, I feel like the same mentality applies, and I could even use this in Wuthering. In fact, I did use it in Wuthering, and the same thing that you're asking me now is pretty much what the community said, which isn't inherently a bad thing. It's more so just it's a different mentality, right? In Wuthering, I could also juggle the enemies, the NPCs, the mini elites, whatever, and then have them off the ground. Now, there are advantages to this in a PvE game, meaning that if I don't have to worry about my enemy, my opponent, acting because they're stuck in the air, I don't take damage, which means I can do whatever I want. And then my goal is, as whoever I am, fighting game player or not, is to find a way to make them in that state for as long as possible. Now, casual players don't have to do that, right? You can just play the game however you want, and if you get the clear, you get the clear. But I think that's why having things that aren't told to you in the game is important, because now it allows me, or anyone that wants to be like me, or is like me, that just kind of wants to explore and dig for stuff, what's a reason for me to keep playing this game?
Well, EO is the type of player to look for things, right? To dig for things, to try to find cool things. But he also said previously that casuals can just play the game, and if they get the clear, they get the clear. The thing about digging for things in a game like Zenless or like Wuwa is that the stuff you're digging for, while it's cool and it's stuff that you can do, it has very little place. There's not really much of a reason to do it because there's no optimization involved. You're losing damage, or worse, you are not able to actually clear what you want to do immediately. And in certain cases, certain bosses are not able to be affected by what you're doing. It's just, in general, it's not as optimal as it would be in a fighting game, where some of the tech that you would do would be meaningful versus an opponent who may not have the knowledge for it, or in certain cases is applicable where you're trying to do a mix-up. You don't really need to do a Kara cancel for anything like that to extend range of anything, if you can just press buttons over and over again and you're going to do the damage that you need to beat the boss regardless, right? That's really what people are going to care about. And the audience that you are explaining this stuff to doesn't care. That's the problem. They don't really care about that stuff, and that stuff isn't going to really matter in the grand scheme of things.
That's in Zenless Zone Zero.
So it's just more so wording. The one that I always mention is...
So Nekomata has, it's two or three moves that she has now, but they're all linked together. So they don't tell you how to get to these moves, but there's ways that you can kind of cheat it so that you get to the move anyway. So there's the hold attack, which is where she kind of just dashes through you. That's important because it repositions you and it puts you behind the enemy so that you get the 36% extra damage and the physical shred, whatever it is that you get from the back attack. So then you have the 4th or 5th ender to her basic attack, and you can choose how you want to do it, right? You can either stop on 4, stop on 5. Both of them still do the dash through thing. When you do the dash through thing, now there's a buff where it's a 33% chance that she'll keep repeating the pattern. And so 33% seems pretty low, but in an action game, 33% is basically 100% until I hit it. Or, it's right.
Look at how the reaction is with everybody else that just heard all of that. This guy doesn't really care. This guy's joking around. And you know, Tectone is just like, oh, yeah, that's huge. Like, yeah, it's all the stat buffs and stuff that people do understand. The thing that he's gonna explain that no one's really gonna care about is the fact that you can plink this attack that he's talking about.
So when you keep doing it, what ends up happening, one of the complaints that some of the theory crafters had about Nekomata during CBT 2 and 3 was that if enemies are spread out,
she can't play the game. Now they found a way to mitigate that. I mean, if that wasn't a problem then, it just came down to like skill issue, but now there's no more skill issue, right? It's literally just keep hitting the dash. She has the dash tech, which is basically a full screen dash. She's the only character in the game that has it. If an enemy is here and she's over here, there's a certain input that you can do.
It's called plinking,
which is just like you hit the input like 1, 2 immediately after the other, and she will go from point A to point B. Wherever the enemy is, she just zips towards them. And you can do this. Now you can do it in the combo and outside of the combo without a dash attack.
What he's talking about with this technique, it's not really something that you would do in like Zenless because it's not necessary. Plinking, it was mostly used in like Street Fighter 4 because there were certain techniques or there were certain attacks that you had to do within 1 frame. That's 1/60th of a second. And the game had like a weird bug where if you pressed the stronger version of a normal, it would input that normal twice if you hit it immediately after the weakest version of the attack. Street Fighter 4, you have Ryu. He could do crouching medium punch, sweep. That was a combo, but it was a very tight link. It's not easy to do. It's like 1 frame, 2 frames. It's very small. So here you see the person press crouching medium punch, right? Whereas here, he presses crouching medium punch, but he also presses light punch as well. So he just literally hits crouching medium punch and light punch like next to each other. You'll see it in his inputs. See? He pressed medium first and then light. See that? So he pressed it immediately. And as a result, he can do things like this. This is important because this is an actual combo that Ryu can do that links into sweep. Whereas that's not really something you need to do in Zenless. Another way of plinking, by the way, another good example is with Guilty Gear, Exard. So you'll see like Chip, he can super jump and he'll fly across the screen. But if you plink Faultless Defense, he'll stop short and not fly across the screen. You see that, right? That's why plinking is important in fighting games. Here in ZZZ, here's the issue. He's saying you can do this. I don't have to plink for this, by the way. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not plinking this. The window to do this is so large, it might as well not even be considered plinking. You're not really plink, you're just tapping it. You're just tapping each button one after the other. It's not the same as like Street Fighter 4 or like Guilty Gear, where it had to be done immediately. There was a reason why plinking is more useful on things like an arcade stick. It's not frame perfect. It's not like there's like strict timing. You have a large window to be able to do a lot of these things. So you don't need to plink in order to actually perform what he's talking about. I will tell you, right? Like when you explain this stuff to an audience like this, they're not going to understand it. And what's worse is that because you're not using the term correctly, they're going to do it and they're going to think it's mad hard when it's actually not. Or worse, they're just not even going to do it at all.
Okay. I feel like we're in a guide video for a second, but like, so, okay, before, well, one quick thing. Ellen actually has an instant teleport thing as well in her basic 3. It's actually kind of really good with her spinning kick. She could actually teleport to another mob. So like, that's there too, but like.
It's funny he mentions that because guess what? You just mashed. I'm serious. It's just pressing square. So like, you see, that's her normal attack, right? When she has the ice charge up, you see how she switches sides and then it sucks enemies back in? That's what that other guy was talking about. And all I did for that was mash square after I already had the ice charged up. And that's the point. A lot of the tech that you find in gacha games is not really necessary right? Like, it's not necessary at all. You don't need to do it.
So my thing with Wuthering and ZZZ both having these like hidden mechanics and just juggling stuff is it's so useless outside of content that actually is like meaningful. Like you can't juggle bosses. You can't.
You see how the VTuber is just shaking on the bottom, by the way? He's like, yeah.
None of these trash mobs in ZZZ are really gonna be like they're killing. And the thing with Wuthering too, even if they introduced a mob, you could juggle that was a boss, right? The issue with that is whenever I watch these people doing these juggle combos, they are not min-maxing their intro concerto skills and maxing their energy. So their intro skills are on fucking 50-year cooldowns. They're never breaking the break bar at all. They're not doing anything, and their damage is pretty ass. So like it's cool, but like it's pointless.
Yeah.
So
if I could play devil's advocate,
So what this guy is saying is basically what I've been saying, is that while it's cool to do these things, on a standpoint of actually being like able to clear the content, you don't need to do it. And so ultimately this just goes into, well, I just want to be cool. So I just want to do this stuff. That's really what I want to do. But the issue is that what Iyokuu is doing is he's making these videos and talking about it, but it comes across as that to a lot of people that watch his videos, that like you kind of have to do it, or you know, you need to do this in order to actually, you know, clear this and whatnot. And I believe later in this Gacha Cast Unedited, he does say, like, you can't just button mash your way through the end game content. And, you know, that is true, but you also don't need to do the tech either that he's explaining. And to be quite honest with you, it really just boils down to just having really good stats. And that's really mostly what Gacha is about, is having really good stats. And maybe a little bit of deliberate button pressing, but not necessarily something advanced as fighting games would need, which is what separates the two. That's the main thing. And a lot of other people will mention this point too.
Just because it happened to me when I said this exact same thing 2 days ago on Twitter. Wuthering Waves has the most advanced combat out of any gacha game ever in all of existence in life. And it takes critical skill to be able to fight bosses. And if you cannot negative edge and juggle the enemy, then you cannot beat the boss. And you need to know how to do these things in order to play Jinshi and get her max damage. Not from me, from the community.
He speaks about negative edge, right? Let's talk about negative edge. People seem to joke about negative edge like, oh, I'm gonna negative edge all over Modernia. Negative edge, whenever you press a button, right? If you release the button, it also counts as the move. The Ryu player, he already pressed heavy punch, right? So he's holding heavy punch down. When he does quarter circle forward and releases the heavy punch, the fireball will still come out. This is called negative edge. Even though a heavy punch was not pressed, the release of the button counts as a press. This type of stuff, right, is in fighting games for a reason. Some moves you need to negative edge in order to even do. So like, for instance, the Balrog example with turnaround punch, this move is only possible if you release a button input. See, he pressed heavy, he's holding down light punch, medium punch. When he releases them, he gets turnaround punch. That move can only be done through negative edging. Now, I don't know what moves Iyoku's talking about that you need to negative edge in order to play Wuwa, but to be quite honest with you, I don't think it's necessary to do that.
I just wanted to play devil's advocate on that, bro. I completely agree with you. It's pointless combat to be able to do this stuff. It just looks cool, and we like to see it because it looks cool.
One thing.
Sorry, you go.
One thing I just wanted to say really quickly is like this all sounds cool, but like when you just need to basic attack and hit E and then you can beat the game, like there's no need to find any of this stuff out, at least for me. So like this all sounds cool that this is in the game, but like I haven't found the need to do any of this.
Even like getting into the hollow like hard modes and stuff, like you still don't need to do all that. Yeah, it's cool to do, but you don't have to. You can just spam left click and E the entire time.
I don't believe that you can spam left click and E in the harder content and still clear at whatever we're considering the clear. So
sure. Yeah. So he's saying like you can't spam left click and E to clear the content. Yes, but you also don't need to do all the fighting game stuff you're mentioning to clear the content either. To be quite honest with you, I think the main issue is that no one is seeing the main point. Iyokuu just wants to do this shit because he thinks it's cool. These guys see him upload those guides and they go, do I have to do this in order to actually beat the game? No. So why are you making it difficult? And so everyone is questioning that, right? On the other hand, I don't believe you need to do all that stuff, so you don't need to do it. He thinks that it's cool. You don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. At the same time, you don't need to do it in order to clear the game. And so there should be no reason to like frame it as like a guide in order to like maximize anything, especially if your content, right, is unlock new combos. It changes combat, changes everything, right? Like a lot of these videos that are on EO's channel are framed as like guides in order to actually like do things. It's not that the stuff is bad. It's just, it's not something that is going to like make it easier to clear content or make it easier to get through like a lot of the gotcha stuff, right? That's really what most people in these communities are looking for. They're not really looking for the fighting game aspect of things. And so I want to go into like this final video where he talks about like Kara canceling, right?
Is called Kara canceling. This is a term in fighting games, which basically means you are canceling the animation of something into something else. Now I know that
the ability to quickly cancel a move into another move before the first move completes its startup. This is a more definite, like descriptive definition than what he explained. Normally, in order to cancel a move, you have to make contact with your opponent, but Kara cancel bypasses this restriction and it cancels immediately before you even see the move on the screen. These two things describe specifically what a Kara cancel is, because there's a difference between Kara canceling and whiff canceling. So let's go to Kara canceling in the actual dictionary, right? And whiff cancel. Canceling a move during its active frames like a normal, except your move whiffed rather than hitting or being blocked by the opponent, right? This is not Kara canceling, right? Kara canceling is when the move that you're canceling into the move before it reaches its active frame, so you don't even see the move at all. That is the key difference between a Kara cancel and a whiff cancel. I want you to see what he does in this like guide.
normally what we do, right? If you hold his attack, he will launch the character. Now, if you're familiar with Marvel vs. Capcom, in particular 3, Marvel vs. Capcom has a universal launcher. This is going to be called like your down heavy, right? That launches.
Your universal launcher in Marvel 3 is usually it's just S. You don't even have to hit down S. It's usually just S.
If you hold the heavy attack, just like in Wuthering Waves, you will jump up in the air with them. If I don't hold heavy attack, he just does this, right? He just does a slam down. Now I'm going to show you what's actually happening. You saw how many times I canceled.
So that's not a Kara cancel. That is a whiff cancel. He's canceling the launcher, right, into this move on hit. And then he's whiff canceling this, right, into the launcher again. So the million stabs, that's whiffing. And then he's going into the launcher again. You see that? So that's what he's doing. He's not even, he doesn't even have the actual like term right. The million stab move would not even come out. You wouldn't see it. There would be no animation, not unless you really slowed it down frame by frame. Here's a good example of what a Kara cancel looks like. See how that DP whiffs? See how that DP connects? Why? He does sweep. And for like 2 or 3 frames, the sweep is out. And then he cancels it into DP. Notice how the first frame of Ken's crouching heavy kick, it moves Ken forward slightly. And then the second Shoryuken gets launched from the new position, which causes it to hit. In normal gameplay, you're not gonna see that kick. It's like you didn't even see it at all. Because the move wasn't even active. It didn't even come out on startup. A whiff cancel, on hit, it goes into the full Rekka. On whiff, it goes into the full Rekka. It doesn't matter. See that? See how he's also whiff canceling the jab in the drive rush into the forward dash, the green dash? That's what a whiff cancel is. The move has to already be out, already be attacking for it to be allowed to whiff cancel again. That's a key difference between Kara canceling and whiff canceling. This doesn't matter in a gacha game because there's no opponent that's going to capitalize off of you whiffing an attack. You're just solely doing this because you want to keep looping the attack over and over. You don't get like huge damage. You don't get like anything crazy. You could get more than this because obviously this can like use this for other characters or maybe other techniques that this character has, but it's not, you don't need to do it. It doesn't even do that much damage. The way he was talking about it, it's not a Kara cancel, it's a whiff cancel. So he's not even using the terminology correctly. And this in and of itself, all these like issues that are being brought up is exactly why like I think the gacha community are just like poking and making fun of it. Like, oh, I negative edged all over myself. Or like, oh man, I want punishing hard combat. We got juggling, etc. Like people are like making fun of fighting game terms. And they don't realize that the fighting game terms are what defined a lot of these games back in the 90s. It defined a lot of the higher level tactics that we had to do to fight other players. So that way we got an edge up on them. So that way we had the knowledge over our opponent, right? For us to be able to do certain setups or certain combos or certain like, or set up certain situations that our opponent would have to think about later on or to be optimal, right? These things were important in fighting games. In gacha games, they're not really as important as just taking my wallet, right? Going into my wallet and then just taking my card and swiping the anime titty, you know? Like just doing that. You don't really need to do any of the advanced stuff because most regular people that play gacha games or normies that play these games and don't want to sweat their ball sack off for 80 hours to try to like fight a person in a fucking esports event and have to play competitively and fly across the world and all that shit. These guys are not doing that. They're literally just trying to play, clear the content, have the best loadout, be fucking brain dead with their waifu and be like, yeah, I love Ellen Joe. Like that's really all they're doing. As somebody that has played fighting games for years, you know, having a gacha community basically just like shit all over my terms because they just don't understand them is one thing, but it's another thing when the guy that's talking about these terms aren't even using it correctly, and then they're also using it in a space that no one's really going to appreciate it or really look at it for because they don't need it, right? Like most people are just going to look at this and be like, Ellen Joe, I got to max her out, right? Like that's all they really care about, you know, and you gotta respect it. Iyokuu probably, again, like I said before, just wanted to have cool combos. He just wanted to have cool things to do. That's it. But I feel like framing them with guides and stuff like that, it's going to come across as, oh, you need to do this stuff in order to clear the content when you don't. And it sucks because it's like, this guy really probably just wanted to have fun just fighting this stuff. It's not really something that a lot of the gacha heads are really going to care about. So it doesn't really matter. I feel like both sides don't really care about the fighting game aspects of it. One may care about the fighting game aspects of it, but they're not voicing it properly or using the definitions properly. And the other side definitely doesn't give a shit. Nobody's really trying to be flashy in gacha games anyway. That's why the games are mostly designed with all this flash when you mash one button. I mean, like, with enough mashing, I'm just gonna now get all these... I'm just gonna get all these special moves and shit, right? Like, the game is automatically built to be flashy. So why do you need to like install extra flash and mechanics and all this stuff? You don't need it. And the game wants you to either purchase things to get the stats of your character up, or, well, you know, grind it out and use the mechanics of the game in terms of what they just tell you to kind of just blow past bosses. Really and truthfully, if you're looking for like in-depth stuff, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, this is where you should go. Like this. You know, if you really want the tech. I bet some of y'all didn't even notice the speedrunners do this shit. Now watch this. When I do it, and I actually have to plink it too. I actually have to plink it like a fighting game. Rapid fire shotgun. I actually have to plink it. The timing is tight. It's not like on some fucking Zenless 30 frames bullshit. I actually have to fucking like plink this. So yeah, you want to find tech? You want to find tech? Just fucking play Devil May Cry, bro. That's all I gotta say about everything. I think EO should just chill. I think the gacha community should just chill. Just stick to your own games. Stick to your own stuff. All right. When it comes to fighting games, y'all both are trash. So it's all good. And yeah, I'm just gonna go back to playing Zenless and enjoying myself. And then maybe playing another tournament or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one. Y'all be easy. Peace.